Welcome to Rock and Roll Fridays. I'm so happy to be here with Stephen Butler of Smash Palace, and we'll talk a lot about Smash Palace on this episode of Rock and Roll Fridays, but I welcome Stephen to the show.
Thanks, Michael. Nice to be here.
Cool. So Stephen, Smash Palace, definitely a band, if people aren't familiar, that's had many iterations over the years, almost like a life in its own, right? So started, I think, way back in the early 80s and has kind of morphed through 30 years of having the band. One, what's it like to have a band that long? And two, how do you manage all those iterations of band members and change and music writing?
The band has always been kind of a vehicle for my brother Brian and I. And I've been playing with Brian. I started writing songs with him when I was 12. So he's 6 years older than me. So he was, when I was just a young lad playing guitar, he was in a successful band that was managed by a DJ, WMMR. And they were playing at the Electric Factory, opening for all these really cool bands, the old Electric Factory.
Yeah. What DJ was it?
T. Morgan.
Okay. So for people not familiar, WMMR is a very famous radio station in Philadelphia. And the old Electric Factory was much smaller. And I believe it was on, what street was that? Off?
Well, you got me because I didn't know anything. I was a real young teen. So when I would go to see my brother play, I was like 13 years old.
Yeah.
I got to go to the Electric Factory, which was pretty great. And I got to see bands like The Who and Spirit and Chicago when they were called Chicago Transit Authority.
Yeah.
It was pretty heady times. So anyhow, that's kind of where, all the music and all these iterations of Smash Palace, where, people come and go, you have a collaboration with different people you bring on board. And for whatever reasons, things fall apart and you replace people, or sometimes people don't want to do it anymore. And,
Yep.
There's all different types of things that reasonings as to why people come and go. But Brian and I have been kind of at the center of this, writing the songs and singing them.
The essence of brotherhood, writing songs like Chris and Rich Robinson and Noel and Liam Gallagher, that must be having a family affair. Are you in sync in all times, or is it kind of you're writing the songs and he's putting guitar to it? Is there a process to that?
Brian is a singer. So early on, I was kind of his vehicle. And when, as a 12-year-old kid, he would go, "Hey, play this." And I'd go, "Okay, I'll play this." And, I didn't really, no one ever told me I couldn't write songs. And he said, "Let's write a song together." And I'm like, "Okay." And I grew up in a musical family. My mom was a really great musician and a songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, it was just like a natural thing. Yeah, why wouldn't you do that?
Right. And so, I read, was it before Smash Palace? You had a band called Quincy?
Yes.
And there was now probably it's a funny story, but at the time it probably wasn't so funny.
It was not funny at the time, but yeah, we were from a band from Haddon Heights, two sets of brothers, and we were playing the Philadelphia area, South Jersey area, and we couldn't get arrested. It was just kind of like, you struggle to get a crappy gig that pays $100 a night or something.
Right.
And the new wave punk thing started happening in New York at CBGB's. And we found out about it, and we were really into the music. And we went up and auditioned because Hilly Crystal, who ran CBGB's, was going to do a live record. So we went up to audition, and he really loved the band. And he said, "I want to manage you guys." And we were like, "Oh, okay." And then all of a sudden, we were opening for all these really cool bands. I remember like one of the first big gigs we did, we were opening for this English band, XTC. And, you're playing and you're looking out in the audience, and there's David Byrne from the Talking Heads, and there's Debbie Harry from Blondie. and there's John Cale, and there's Nico, and there's Joey Ramone. There's all these people, and all of a sudden you're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and literally within a few months, we were getting record deal offers, and we went from like nowhere to being in the middle of this scene. And so we got signed to Columbia Records, and we signed with Columbia Records because Paul Atkinson, who was the guitarist in the Zombies,
Yep.
the big hit time of the season and stuff, he signed us to Columbia Records, and which is one of the main reasons why we did it, because we worshiped the Zombies. It was like
right.
Beatles or something. So we did that, and but Columbia didn't want us to be managed by Hilly Crystal. They were like, we're giving you guys the biggest record deal we've ever given a new band, and we think Hilly is a great club owner, but he's not an established manager. So we signed in '79, and we spent almost a year getting out of our contract with Hilly. We made a record. We went out on tour. The record was doing really well, and we were in California. We just played the Whiskey A Go Go.
Mm-hmm.
We were staying at the Chateau Marmont, the Rock and Roll Hotel.
Yeah, the rock and roll royalty.
Yeah, and I'm sitting by the pool the next morning, and I get a call from my lawyer saying we've just been sued. I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Quincy Jones has sued the band," and I went, "Who's Quincy Jones?"
Who's Quincy?
I'm 23 years old. I don't know who Quincy Jones is.
Yeah.
So
pretty powerful guy in music.
And is that he was on CBS Records, which is Columbia is a subsidiary of CBS, and he held a lot of sway. So he said, they can't use my name.
Right, because the band name was Quincy.
Yes. He had sued a band, listen to this, called Q, and won. So it kind of, it was a cease and desist. They were taking our records off the shelves, and it was kind of a start over moment, where, okay, you guys can go back in and do another record. But it was pretty hard to get.
It was a momentum killer.
Exactly. And then the whole belief in the band at Columbia kind of sagged. We started making a second record, and Brian and I weren't happy with the producer and what they were doing musically. We quit. We actually quit the band in the middle of making a record. Crazy as it seems. But about 18 months later, we got another deal at Epic, and we had the band Smash Palace, our first record. And we have a new record that's just about to come out in June. So
awesome. And this iteration of the band includes David, who's formerly from the Hooters, right? And I won't try to pronounce his last name because I'll kill it.
I'll sick it. Like, I'm sick of him.
How did you hook up with David? Have you had a long relationship with him? Because obviously, being in the Philadelphia area, South Jersey area, the Hooters are the Hooters, even nationally, but here they're, one of the top known bands in this area. So
they're the Philadelphia Beatles.
Right.
And you would think that we would all know each other. We were on the same label.
Right.
Hooters, and the Hooters first record and the Smash Palace record came out within 6 months of each other, but we didn't know each other.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of bands at that time that I didn't know. The A's were another band that I really didn't know those guys. So David's got a band called In the Pocket, and he gets all of these musicians: Tommy Conwell, the Hooters, the A's, Smash Palace, a lot of other people. I'm sorry if I'm leaving people out here, but all these great artists, and we play together. And I've got to meet all these people, and we've all become good friends.
It's awesome.
And Smash Palace really changed up because I started meeting all of these people, and In the Pocket, and some of the members of my band at the time weren't like totally dedicated, I think, or whatever it was, I don't know.
Right.
Dave came in as the drummer, and we actually had Franny Smith, who was the bass player from the Hooters for a while.
Nice.
He's moved. He's living somewhere else right now. So we have Greg Marigus, who's on bass. Cliff Hillis, who's a real well-known singer-songwriter in the area, plays guitar. Wally Smith, who was the original keyboard player in Quincy.
Oh,
So,
very cool.
so
And you would know better than I, but just from a musical standpoint, experienced musicians, call it a working band or whatever you call it, when you hear it, you can tell the difference, right? And I'm sure you being in bands and playing long enough, when you have the right group of people together, that it just flows and the sound just works and everyone's in tune. And I think the listeners know, right? They know the difference between a 2-year band and a 20-year band.
yeah, no, there's a lot to do with that. I mean, these are probably pound for pound the best musicians I've played with. We rarely rehearse, so it's kind of like we cut the record, and it's practice to me is something you do at home, and then when you rehearse, you get
Yeah.
and you play the music.
Yeah.
So because everybody's really busy, everybody plays. I play in different bands. Um, I just did a record with this English guy, Edward Rogers, last year. It's called Rogers and Butler, and we've had a lot of good experiences with that. But I'm just, I never used to play with a lot of different people. I was just in this band and that was it. But now I play with all kinds of people.
Right. And how has COVID affected your creativity and your playing and your collaboration? Has it helped? Has it hindered? Or
I've been really productive writing wise. So I've probably written more songs in the last 18 months, 2 years than I have in my life. But because I'm working with Edward Rogers. He lives in New York right now, and I'm working with Smash Palace. So between the two, I'm just like cranking out songs.
right.
And
Including the lack of ability to go out into the world, right? So it's a forced quarantine writing session.
Ed Rogers and I had a tour that was booked this summer where we had the opportunity. So this is a really weird thing. So we're signed by Paul Atkinson, who was the guitar player in the Zombies, who passed away, unfortunately, I think in 2003. But in a weird twist of fate, Edward Rogers and I got to do opening shows for the Zombies.
Oh, very cool.
The original band without Paul Atkinson. So and we hit it off really well. And they said, you're like our new favorite band, and would you want to come to England? And they were going to do, I think, England, Scotland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Holland, a tour. And we were like, yeah, we're totally.
Yeah.
And then COVID hits.
Right. Yeah. Everyone has their and then COVID hit story. Right. So I want to flip over to why music, right? I mean, you were talking about being young and writing and playing songs with your brother, but as they all say, I should have been a doctor, right? I could have been a lawyer. What got you hooked on this thing called music, where you were like, I can't not do this in my life?
Like I said, I grew up in a musical family, and music was always played in the house, physically being played. And I think the thing though that really hooked me was the Beatles, and having two older brothers. So they were the ones that were like totally into it, and of course I was into it too because they were. And that's when I started playing guitar.
Yeah.
And after that, it was like I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else. I remember when I graduated high school, I had no intention of going to college. I was like, I'm going to be a rock star. And
right.
Of course, like about 6 months into it, I went, I'm not going to be a rock star. And I ran into a friend and I said, what are you doing? And he goes, I'm going to college. I said, what are you majoring in? And he says, guitar. And I went, what?
Right.
College for guitar?
Right.
So I went to college and I studied guitar, and that was it never really seemed like work.
Right.
It's hard. You do a lot of stuff and a lot of crappy gigs, but it's I think a lot of
and I'm sure it's the experiences, right? Talking about the scene in New York and the
Yeah.
potential to play overseas and to meet all these people. And, that gets me back to kind of the premise of my podcast is, all these people, fans and artists like yourself, get the opportunity to, maybe be in awe of sometimes of people they come across. Do you have a story or two where you're like, wow, I can't believe I'm in this situation musically? And being a working artist, I'm sure you have more run-ins than most fans, but is there something that comes to mind?
I think the thing when I was in Quincy, there was just there was the Quincy was really popular along with the B-52s before we had records out, and you would just have the you'd be playing, and then somebody would up on stage would say, David Bowie's in the audience.
way to put you at ease, right?
And then you go over afterwards and you meet him or something. Or I remember we were playing at this place called the Ritz, and Ian Hunter and Keith Richards came backstage to see the band because Ian Hunter was interested in producing the Quincy record. So you'd have like all of these people that you were just, after a while, you kind of became, it wasn't like a big deal. It was just happening all the time.
Right. Yeah.
So many experiences that you forget. Like I remember like about a year ago, Quincy got back together to do, we cut an EP. It's the first time we had played together since 1982. And they're all talking about, remember when we were hanging out with Frank Zappa? And I'm like,
and you're like, no.
I remember that. And I go, yeah, you were there. He was like a half an hour in our dressing room, and he was just talking music, and we were playing in Philly. And I'm like, what? So, a lot of times you're, I was probably just worried about maybe my amp was breaking or something, or, I was stringing the guitar, you got other things on your mind.
Yeah. And, I always talk about this, the people that I talk to about meeting people in my own experiences, from a fan's perspective with bands, it's like, it's a better experience when your band is cool to you, right? If you have a great experience. And I think the bands know that those are the fans, and that's why that's how they make their living. I've always had positive experiences, right? And I often wonder, what would I think of my bands if I didn't have positive experiences? Like would I change how I hear the music or engage? And it sounds like, people were just people, right? Whether it's Frank Zappa or whoever you're meeting, they're just people loving music also.
I'm going to make a statement. I don't mean to, I hate generalizations because, you don't want to say all these people, but I'm a total Anglophile. So, I mean, I love English bands.
Yeah.
And so when Quincy first started touring, we were opening for a lot of English bands, but a lot of them weren't really that nice. And you're on tour with a band and you're doing like 20 dates and you're like, hey man, they're like up there for like 2 hours. They're not going to give us a sound check. And they're purposely doing that because they don't want you to have a sound check because they don't want you to sound good.
Right. A little unfriendly competition, right? On tour.
Exactly.
Well, yeah. And everyone's heard the horror stories of tours. I mean, they're like, they've made movies about these stories. So let me ask you, as we kind of wrap up, where can people find your music, and where's the best place for people to go to hear Smash Palace?
Well, you can always go to any, Amazon, iTunes, any place that has digital streaming, you'll find Smash Palace. And we have a website, smashpalacemusic.com. We have a Facebook page, which I like because a lot of times with the Facebook thing, or just me, Steve Butler, on Facebook, people want to talk music. I interact with whoever wants to talk about music, which is cool.
It's awesome.
And if you live in the South Jersey area, on June 16th, we'll be playing at the Haddon Heights Dell, which is a small amphitheater.
Yeah. Is that the outside? Yeah, outside. That's a very cool amphitheater. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're real happy about that. That'll be our first live gig in 18 months.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. Awesome. Well, Stephen Butler from Smash Palace, I appreciate your insights and great stories. And I recommend everyone check out Smash Palace and Google Stephen Butler for sure. Thanks so much.
Good to talk to you.